I'm going to talk to Nick now. Nick, who's calling in from Virginia. Nick, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Jason. First of all, Dan, I'm a huge fan of you and Truth Wanted. I've been a listener for at least a couple of years that I can remember off the top of my head, so I appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for saying that. It's so crazy. It's weird thinking I've been doing this for a few years now. It's crazy to think that there's people who've been following me that long. You guys are awesome. By the way, shout outs to everybody who follows me on Twitter, but also who always just says nice things, because sometimes, like today, it's like, man, this is so fucking hard to talk about. But thank you. Thank you for the support. So what's going on, Nick? How can we help?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up this, it can especially ring true today, but this kind of got on my head a few weeks ago. So briefly after the events in Uvalde, I got into a good old Facebook argument with someone about gun control and about the whole concept of it. And after going back and forth and me citing several sources about what can be done and how things can change and how things can get better, this person, after several interactions, just said, look, no matter what you say, no matter what anyone says to me, no matter what sites you source or whatever, he said, no one's going to change my mind. No one's taking my guns away. I don't care what you think. This is my opinion. And that's how it is. And it got me to thinking, like, wow, like there are plenty of people who believe things, and regardless of how well or how poorly founded those beliefs are and whatever's presented to them, they are never going to give up those beliefs, and they're just going to continue believing for bad reasons. Yeah. So how do we, as a society, and how do we confront people who hold beliefs like this, who don't want to change, who refuse to change? And how do we progress and confront issues like abortion rights and gun violence and so on when a portion of the population just doesn't give a shit and doesn't want to change their view?
Well, Nick, that's a great thing to talk about. We're supposed to be living in a democracy so that, like, it doesn't matter if you can't change the 1% of people's minds. We're still going to do it, right? Like, that's supposed to be how it works. Obviously, the system hasn't been working that way. I learned something recently about people with schizophrenia, funnily enough. And I saw something that said that about 50% of people who suffer from schizophrenia, and there's different typings of schizophrenia. So I don't know if this is talking about all schizophrenia or just specific typings, but about 50% suffer from something called ignosis. And this is this idea that they actually don't know that they're sick. They actually aren't even aware of the issues that are causing, that mental illness. And I think about, I was reading this and I just thought, man, how much does that apply to just regular people about their beliefs? Not saying that the average person is sick, but that the average person just doesn't even realize how far deep the rabbit hole sometimes their beliefs are, or where even the foundations of their beliefs even lie. Because you can look at that conversation I had with Anthony Magnabosco when I was a Christian, and I was pretty Christian at the time, right? Like I said things that just weren't rational, that just didn't make sense, that, the YouTube comment section already pointed out how, ludicrous some of the things I said, but that was the culture I was raised in. That was the environment that I was brought up in. And so that was literally my brain. My brain was just exposed to only these ideas. And it wasn't until I was exposed to ideas outside of that I began to change. So I think above all else, exposure is kind of key here. I wanted to talk about earlier, Nick, before this stuff happened, about how people were freaking out about the new Lightyear movie because there was a scene of two women kissing for like less than a second. Everybody's like, whoa, we can't have the agenda shut down. But like, that's actually exactly the right thing to do. Like that normalizing it and putting it out there is how you move that Overton window, is how you get people talking. So I think like the best thing we can do as individual people is at least bring it up, at least put it in people's minds, at least plant that seed. We may not be able to get people all the way over individually, right? Not all of us are skilled in that art of communication, but also it's just hard to change people's minds, right? Like there's a reason you go to therapy multiple times. Usually you don't go to therapy and all of your problems get fixed in one talk session. But it does happen through repeat going back, and it does happen through repeated exposure. So I think just continuing to have that conversation, it really does help. It really does make a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. But I think that's the best I got, Nick. That's really the best I got. I don't know. What do you think, Jason?
No,
I would say that if you feel that the person is worth it, that you may not think you can reach this person now. You may not think you can reach this person 10 years from now, 20 years from now. But if you think that this person is worth it, that they're a friend, they're a colleague, they're a family member, or they're just some crazy guy on the street that you met and you're like, no, I want to talk with this person because their hair is cool. I don't know. But if you think that this person is worth having the conversation, it's going to be a slog. It's going to be an absolute slog. But like Dan said, keep having it. Keep exposing this person to better ideas. To ideas that are much more rational, that do comport with reality, and don't just rely on a gut. Well, they're not going to take my this, that, and the other thing away. I mean, you could go the snarky way and mention to them that the United States government has M1 tanks and he has a AR-15. He's not going to win that battle. Whatever it takes to say, hey, there are better ways.
I mean, look at, like, this sounds like a terrible example, but look at the radicalization of Nazis in this country right now. And how is that happening? They're being exposed on places like 4chan, seriously. And alt-right groups on Twitter and Facebook are posting these things. Like, that's how that's happening. Their discourse is not rational. Their discourse is not something that I could argue into a conclusion that should be reasonable to believe. However, just that pure exposure alone is enough to get people somewhere. And that is fucking scary, but it also says something about the human mind. It says something that when you reach your fingers out there, you can try to get those people. And they're acting covertly. They're being real secretive about it. I don't know. We have to be even louder. But Nick, go ahead.
I will give you a much better example of exposure, just as someone who grew up in a very far right, a very Christian household. I went to college at a Baptist university one town over, and after college, I am a communist and I am an anti-theist. So if I can unpack it, anyone can. 10 minutes from home.
See, Nick, you went to that liberal college and they gave you that communist ideology. So
I know the Baptist Southern University in backwoods East Tennessee gave me that communist anti-theist talking to.
So Nick, you answered your own question. You answered your own question. That's great.
I understand that exposure helps a lot, and I understand that you were speaking with a caller from Italy, that street epistemology can make a huge difference. I know those things help, but in a time where things can seem really hopeless, and where the decision today was made by 3 individuals who were appointed to the highest court in the land by a president who didn't win the popular vote and was impeached twice. And so it definitely feels like
currently under
minority can control. It definitely feels like a minority can control over half of the population. And so those things can feel really doom and gloom.
It can. Nick, there are things that I just simply cannot advocate for because legally I cannot, and I'm on a call-in show, and that's produced by a nonprofit. Let me leave it at that. Okay, there are examples of direct action that people have chosen to take and have chosen to do because effectively they believe that the system as it is broken. And I can't comment on that, but I will say, for our own mental health standpoint, if you want to work within the system as most effectively as you can, I really think what we kind of laid out is some of what you can do besides joining other organizations that are trying to make meaningful change and trying to unite other people. I mean, I think I'm trying my best by doing this show here. And that's honestly, Nick, that's what helps me sleep at night. Because at least I can say, well, there's going to be a couple hundred people that listen to this. That's more than what most people do. You know what I mean? It's like I can do that for myself, but obviously not everybody can do that. You kind of have to figure out your own path there, you know?
No, I appreciate everything that you do, even on the smaller show on a ACA. I love your show and I love everything you do. Before you let me go and before you move on, I just want to promote to anyone else, to anyone who can or anyone has access to or anyone is medically able to. I personally, to protect myself and my partner, I scheduled my consultation for my vasectomy today, and am planning to go fulfill that. If you have access to it and you can and you're medically able to and that fits your life course, I would absolutely suggest that. And I would suggest also to anyone, be careful what you post on social media. Make sure that you're helping your neighbor, make sure that you're helping those friends around you, but make sure that you're also protecting yourself and that you're not putting more information on the internet than is necessary, and make sure that you're watching your back legally as well, especially if you live in some of the states that have already imposed trigger laws.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
I'm living a liberal bastion.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick, for calling in. And thanks again for the kind words. Again, when people call in and say nice things, I don't know, it humbles me. It really does. Because I'm really glad people enjoyed the show. Obviously, there's a lot of people that help make shows like this happen. It's not just me. It's folks like Jason and it's folks like the crew who also believe in the spirit of what this show is trying to accomplish, but also the other shows here at the Atheist Community of Austin. So thank you to everyone who helps make the show, and thank you to everyone who supports it. It really does mean the absolute world to me.